All right, good evening all. Welcome to our annual Endicott College Graduate School Leadership Women in Leadership Online Conference. I just want to thank all of our guests and Dr. Stell for moderating again. And just a couple of housekeeping notes, just make sure folks have their audios on mute. And then at the top of the hour, or the bottom of 5:30, we'll allow for questions from you folks. I have a bunch of questions as well, so you can either type it in the chat, or if you want to just kind of raise your hand and dial in, that works. But again, I just want to thank for our panel and moderator, and just also want to thank Dr. Swanton for all her support. So without further ado, I just want to introduce Dr. Swanton so she can say a couple of words before we start here.
Sure, Anthony, thank you. I also appreciate the panel. This is an outstanding panel and with some alumni as well as professionals in the field. So I hope you enjoy it and have great questions. And as Anthony says, we do record it, but I appreciate the people attending, and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of this. Dr. Stell also teaches in our program, so we're very excited to have her moderating tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Stell, you want to take it away?
Certainly, we are blessed today to have Brittany Kane, who's a Senior Associate Athletic Director for Boston University, Rebecca Plesha, who is the Director of Marketing and Fan Experience at Penn State, Megan Brinson, who is the Senior Account Manager, Member Services for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and Taylor Benna-Harold, who is the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Compliance from the University of Texas at El Paso. So we do have 4 questions today that we'll be asking you. We will go in order. And Brittany, you'll be first up on that particular question today. Before we get into the questions, though, if you will each give just a quick bio about yourselves. And Brittany, we'll start with you, please.
Perfect. Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Brittany Kane, Senior Associate AD at Boston University. I'm a proud Endicott alum for my undergrad. I played women's lacrosse there. Have been at Boston University now for about 12 years in a few different roles right now, overseeing a lot of internal operations, business office, facilities, human resources, just to name a few, and really excited to be here tonight.
Excellent. Rebecca?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Plesha. I am currently one of the directors of marketing and fan experience here at Penn State. I oversee all of the marketing and promotions and game day for men's basketball, football, men's lacrosse, swimming and diving, and baseball. So excited to be here tonight.
Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Brinson. So I'm Senior Account Manager of Member Services at the Oklahoma City Thunder. I got my undergrad at Texas A&M, where I majored in sport management, minor in business. And so what I do is I pretty much oversee a portfolio of season ticket members for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I'm just their point of contact for all things Thunder and, getting the most out of their season tickets.
Excellent. And Taylor?
Hi, I'm Taylor Benna-Harold. I'm the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Compliance down at the University of Texas at El Paso. I have been in college athletics about 7 years, I think it's been now. I did my undergrad at Pittsburgh State University, a D2 school in Southeast Kansas, and then I went to law school at the University of Kansas, which is where I got into compliance. Before I came to UTEP, I've also worked at Villanova University and Creighton University.
All right, here we go. Very first question. Is the culture of the sports industry inclusive and welcoming for women in leadership positions? And Brittany, we'll start with you.
Awesome. Well, from my perspective, I know we probably all have different perspectives. I would start by saying that it is more inclusive than ever. Right now, you see even just how many fans are showing up at women's sports. You see Caitlin Clark taking the headlines in national media, and I would say that I've been lucky at Boston University to feel that inclusive nature. And I would say a lot of that starts at the top with our athletic director and having an advocate in him. But I think that there are also barriers still. I don't want to say that there aren't, right? I think we've all experienced them in our own way, and I know we'll get into this later, but I think that we have seen huge strides in sport, especially for women. And you look in the college athletic space and how many women athletic directors are getting hired or minority candidates getting hired into these leadership roles. And so I think it is continuing to grow. I don't think we're quite there yet. But I believe it's inclusive, but I think it's sometimes on us and also our male counterparts too, to help continue lift all of each other up to continue to grow and make it better for everyone. And it's not just for women, but it's for other people in the industry as well. But I would say from my perspective and my experience, it has been, but I know there are moments that I feel the opposite of that. But I would say from a holistic view, if I look back over the 12 years I've been a part of it, I've been lucky to see that, but I know that's not always the case depending on the environment you're in too. So I'll leave it there as my answer, knowing we have a lot more to go.
Rebecca?
I would say, as being a former student athlete, just from the years that I was a student athlete to where I am now and growing within the career path that I've been on, I can say there's been leaps and bounds that we have just even more progressed to being more inclusive in college athletics with females. I previously worked for a female AD, which was super awesome. I think that we are moving more towards seeing more female ADs and female senior ADs and deputy ADs, which I can honestly say when I was in undergrad was not the same. So just the evolution of females in these leadership roles, but also, as Brittany alluded to, like the Caitlin Clark effect across the all of college athletics right now and female athletics. It's so exciting to be a part of and so exciting to see people buying in and seeing what we all knew was there years ago. So I think it's a really great time to be a female in athletics. I think it's each and every day there's something new and something even better. And I look forward to see what comes of these next future years with leadership and how it evolves for females.
Excellent. Megan, you're at the professional level. How are things different for you?
And I definitely, I think from what I've been in the industry for about 6 years now, and I've been really fortunate to kind of see a lot of women leaders. And so I've heard stories, and I guess I've talked to people, you kind of hear, things that have happened, but I definitely think it has become a lot more inclusive. And I also, they were talking about the Caitlin Clark effect, but also I think it's one of the good things of social media nowadays is there is, that they kind of show a lot more girls that you wouldn't think of, whereas before it was just, men on TV or the men's sports. And so now I think social media has just really expanded our, horizon of what is out there in regards to women in sports. And so I think right now, as Brittany said, it is really at its height. It was really cool to see a woman WNBA player at the All-Star games, for the NBA. So I think just little things like that in the past they never would have done is really cool to see it really start excelling as women in sports.
Excellent. Taylor, your experiences.
I agree with a lot of everything that's been said. I think huge strides have been made, particularly in the last handful of years. There definitely is still a lot of work to go. I think especially when it comes to retaining strong women working in athletics. Unfortunately, I know a handful of women that have left to go back to other industries because of, their typical gender roles, having children, things like that. And then I also feel like another area that could still be worked on is I know some women who feel like they are still having to take on a lot more than their male counterparts, even if they're at an equal level. They feel like they have additional other duties as assigned because they're feeling like they're trying to, to prove that they belong.
Understood. All right. Let's move on to question number 2. To what extent have women in the sports industry faced discrimination or exclusion based on the fact that they're a female? And Rebecca, we'll start with you.
I can honestly say I haven't dealt with this firsthand, but I do know that there's this persona of those that work with sports like football, men's basketball, your male dominant revenue generating sports. You typically don't associate that having a female sport administrator or a female marketing rep. So I like to think that we're in a unique spot now where here at Penn State, all of the support staff is female working with men's basketball right now. So we have a Stratcom rep that's female, myself in marketing, our social media person is female. So it's very cool to see the shift in how things are changing and it's going more female. And I think that's super cool to be a part of. It's more common now to see female sport administrators with men's basketball or female sport administrators with football. And that's something that I know as a female in athletics, I strive for that. So seeing those barriers kind of being broken down and it's not such a male dominant role is super exciting to be a part of. But as I mentioned, I haven't really seen it firsthand for me, but just seeing those barriers being broken moving forward.
And you've experienced you've been at several different universities, right?
Yes.
You've been at SMU.
I was at Ohio State for a
Okay.
year. I was at SMU for 2 years after that and UTEP for 2 years. And then now I've been at Penn State for finishing up season 3.
Excellent. Okay, good. Megan?
So yeah, I'm pretty fortunate. I've never kind of experienced that within my organization. The Thunder does an amazing job. We have female VPs. In my department, our 3 senior account managers are all women. And so that is really cool that the 3 of us kind of get to oversee our department. And so I know that's something, there's definitely a disconnect in the world, I'm sure, with other organizations, but I haven't experienced it within my own organization. I know sometimes when I have my season ticket members, we dress up for games. Us girls, we wear dresses and heels, boys wear suits. And every now and then our season ticket members, will make comments. So we kind of, brush off, and the boys really don't get that from, their older lady accounts. But it's stuff like that it's at least nice to know that within the organization that they will have our back and they won't turn it on us as, oh, you shouldn't have worn your heels to the game. They'll always make sure and check in and, make sure that we guys are comfortable and stuff.
Yeah, back on track. So thankfully I've not dealt with this firsthand either. I have a few notes in first. Sorry, I'm a little thrown off after that. I've not experienced this firsthand. I don't take that for granted. I'm very thankful for all of the strong women who have come before and paved the way. That being said, I've experienced some, comments or situations, nothing on a deep level, but just those things that make you go, and you just can't help but wonder sometimes, like, is it because I'm a woman? And I just try to brush those off. I've developed a pretty thick skin, working in this industry as well. But like I said, I think there's huge strides have been made and there's still more work to be done.
And then Brittany.
Yeah, I would make a similar maybe comment, or maybe from a little bit of experience similar to what Megan said, is I often deal with fans or donors, and sometimes those donors are, not to stereotype, your 60-year-old man who gives a lot of money to a university, and they sometimes don't think that the woman maybe understand the sport. I pick on maybe hockey, right? That maybe assuming you don't know all the details of what goes into that sport or the rules or what's happening on the ice. And so sometimes having to justify, a little more than a male would, to say, hey, I know that we have this recruit coming in. I know he was a top 5 kid, making sure you overly sell that what's going on in that program. And so, it's a little bit stereotypical, when you're dealing with that, maybe old boys club a little bit, when you're dealing with especially people that are giving a lot of money to a university. But it's not a common theme, but I feel like sometimes you're in a moment or you're at a dinner with someone that you need to justify your knowledge of sport more than the male at the dinner in that situation. Again, I haven't experienced that a ton. It's a one-off situation, but I think that definitely still exists at the college level, and I'm sure at the pro level, as Megan said, and at all levels of sport.
I think that my only experience with that was with a donor. When you say you have to let them know that sport, with someone in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, they're not necessarily accustomed to seeing a female at some of these events and knowing their sport, and where a man can just kind of perhaps get by and not say something. You do feel like you have to say a little bit more to show them that you really are interested in sport, and you really do have the knowledge base. So that's only happened to me once in the years that I worked in college athletics for UTEP. So good deal. And then let's go on to the next question. What are the motivations for and barriers faced by women in their specific leadership roles within the sport industry? Do the motivations to succeed in a male-dominated workplace outweigh the challenges faced? And you each, even though some of you are in collegiate athletics, you each come from a different aspect of collegiate athletics, and then Megan's in the pro side. So we'll start with Rebecca. What are the motivations for and the barriers faced?
I definitely think that the motivations for me are being a former student athlete at the Division II level. I want to be able to put out that best game day and that best atmosphere and that best experience for my student athletes. They are 100% my why. I know at the Division II level, I didn't get as many of the entities and the perks that a Division I athlete gets. And I love being able to see the looks on their faces of, oh my gosh, this was awesome. Thank you for creating this atmosphere. Thank you for working day in and day out to make this the best experience for me here at whatever institution I've been at. So they are 100% my motivation and my why. But also continuing to break those barriers, and that you're seeing more females working with male programs. You're seeing more females in leadership roles. And I think that for me is a motivating factor of I strive to be in those positions one day. I know that I want to be up at that level of a senior AD, and I want to be able to advocate for student athletes, male and female. So how can I continue to break those barriers and really just kind of progress within the world of college athletics?
Thank you. Megan.
Yeah, I think one of the motivations and kind of the reason why I wanted to go into sports is just being able, I know what it's like to be a fan and for sports to change, your experience, when the game's going bad. I've gone to games, my team's gotten blown out, but I still left because I was like, that was a blast. Or my interactions with people, and it would stick with me. And I loved that impression that it had. And so once I was getting older, I was like, I want to make that impression on someone. I was like, I'm still thinking about this, that lady who gave me a little gift bag or something like that. I was like, I want to do that for someone. And so I think that's what really motivated me, was that behind the scenes, I'm not down there on the court or anything, but I know that I'm in charge of the people when they come to the games, that they're leaving knowing that their money was well spent, their time was well spent. We have a game tonight at 9 o'clock. I want people to make it worth coming to, the game, knowing that, okay, Megan will, make sure it was worth it. And so that's, I think, just the big motivation, because I didn't play sports, but I know all about being a fan. And so I want to take my, knowledge and what I liked about being a fan and put that towards how I'm going to make an impression on Thunder fans.
Okay. Taylor?
Yeah, so I've been lucky in my career to work, including some of my internships when I was an undergrad. I've been really lucky to work with and work for some really strong women and great leaders. And so I just kind of take that as motivation to be that for younger women, and especially our female student athletes that I work with every day. And then also just to, continue to prove to myself that I belong. And so on the other hand, are we answering the barriers right now as well?
You just go on. You just do what you're doing.
On the other hand, a barrier that goes with, proving to myself is imposter syndrome, and having to tell yourself, like, your hard work got you here, you belong, you're worth it, all of that.
Wonderful. Okay. Brittany.
We give a similar answer to what Rebecca said about student athlete experience. A big reason continue to work in college athletics is because of my student athlete experience, and be able to provide that, every day to our students, and making connections with them, not just while they're here, but obviously once they graduate too, and the relationships you build, and the amazing things they do while they're at BU, but also, once they graduate. So that is definitely one of the motivations for me to continue to work in sport. I think, again, similar to what everyone's saying about barriers, that, I think continuing to just break the ceiling through of, women can continue to do more. This is not it. And that, we all are in this together. And, every time something new happens, continuing to promote that, and make sure that those that work, whether for you or around you, feel that celebration of that too, and that they know that this is another big step for women in sport. And that might be more motivation than barrier, but making sure we share when a barrier is broken, that, why it's so important to women working in sport.
So joining us is Maria Kennedy, former athletic director for El Paso Independent School District and current athletic director for Loretto Academy, Scholastic Athletic Director. And we're discussing leadership roles in the industry and the motivations to succeed in a male-dominated industry. Do you have any advice or information to share about the motivations for or the barriers faced by women in your specific industry?
Well, just hearing a few of the snippets here as I apologize for being late. You know, my trying to figure out Eastern Western time, I have no idea, so I do apologize. Well, a little bit about just my quick background. I have 6 brothers, so being in a man's world is not anything new to me, obviously. So I think I may have just a smidgen of an advantage because I know how to take care of myself around a bunch of boys and men my entire life. But I think if I could offer anything to anyone is, as a woman, realistically, you want to be the smartest person in the room. I think if you know your stuff, if you screaming and yelling and being domineering, that to me doesn't get you where you need to be. It's being smart. It's being cooperative. It's being able to know that the coach down the hall is the head football coach, and I may just be the girls basketball coach, but if I go down that hallway and ask him for something, I know that he's going to come through. Why? Because if he needs me to do something, I'm going to be there to do it for them too. It takes a lot of reciprocal agreements, so to speak, for us to work with a bunch of men. But by the same token, we make sure they don't take advantage of us. We work as hard as we need to, but again, we are to be the smartest person in the room, because there really is no 2 ways about it. Know your stuff, whether it's football, basketball, whatever it is that's at the table. Know what you're talking about, and I think that's how you earn respect, is just being educated and knowing what you're doing.
Excellent. We'll move on to the final question before we open up for Q&A. What are the best practices for women in the sports industry to advance in a leadership role? Megan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess I would say, be proactive. It's never too early to start networking, to start getting internships, volunteering. I know that's one thing that I've learned kind of being in the sports industry is everyone knows everyone. And it's kind of fun to see now on the inside that every team, someone knows someone who knows someone, and it just goes like that. So as long as wherever you're at, you're networking and you're building out this group of people, next place you go, they'll probably know someone. And that's, I think, what's the most important thing. Another thing that I really liked what Taylor said was, all kind of about the imposter syndrome. Like once you get to a place, never feel like you're there on accident or anything like that. Constantly be looking for your next step. One of my favorite quotes, I think that just talks about that you're not there on accident, is in Legally Blonde when she's telling Warner, like, what? We took the same LSATs, we were taking the same classes, like, how am I different from you? I always think of that when I'm sitting around a group of guys. I'm like, we got hired by the same people, we went through the same hiring process, and I got hired just like they did, so I belong here with them also.
Okay. Taylor?
Yeah, I second everything that Megan said, and then I would also add something that I had to do very early in my career was swallow my ego a little bit, because even though I had a law degree and I had passed the bar exam, I had a really hard time those first couple years just trying to get your foot in the door. So don't, don't let your ego take over. Like just accept an internship, accept a post-grad opportunity, go do your master's somewhere, kind of put in your time, and then and network, as Megan said, while you're doing that. Meet as many people as you can, because a lot of it is such a small world, in college athletics as well, as Megan mentioned, professional athletics. So you just gotta do your time, work hard. I'll repeat the imposter syndrome thing that I've said a couple times, and then I actually saw a quote earlier this afternoon that one of my female colleagues in our athletic department, she shared it on Instagram, and I saw it over the lunch hour. It says, if you weren't capable, the opportunity would never have come your way. So just, really taking that to heart today. And, I've been really proud and honored that Dr. Stell invited me to be on this panel, and hopefully some people that are listening in today will be sitting in our shoes, in just a few short years. So.
Excellent. Brittany?
Yeah, I would expand on the network piece. We all know how small, whether it's college athletics or the sport world is in general. But I would say, you want to have a big network, but also advocates too, and that's men and women. Some of the best, sometimes having a male advocate that can say this person's going to have a voice at the table, as a female, that will help too. It doesn't just have to be woman lifting women up to make this successful. And a lot of my successes from a lot of my male counterparts and learning from them. And so making sure you have a diverse network is definitely important. And I would, this has kind of been said throughout, but just work hard, right? Working in sport is not all the fun and glory that everyone always thinks it is. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. So always just make sure you put your head down too and work hard, and people notice that. And I guess that plays into your network because people will remember that down the road as you're interviewing and going to other places.
Thank you. Maria?
I can't add a whole lot more. I think it is huge. Megan started the conversation with knowing people. I mean, because everybody knows somebody. You just never know. I'll share a real quick story with you. When I was at a state track meet years ago, I was sitting with one of my colleagues from one of the other districts in Texas. And of course, the district escapes me right now. But we're sitting there, and my principal at one of the high schools called and said, "Hey, Maria," says, "we've got so-and-so coach softball's out recruiting, and they're at such and such stadium. They got locked in. They can't get out. Everybody's gone." Well, my buddy sitting next to me knew exactly where they were, who to contact. And so again, there you go. It was that simple, but it's not that simple. Had I not had that relationship with him, I don't know who I would have been able to call to get my coach out of jail, but it's just amazing the people that you get to know, and growing up in a tiny little small town here in Texas, and the number of people that I know across the state and even across the country is just amazing. And so I can't take credit for a lot of the stuff I've done because I've had so much help along the way, from my high school teachers to coaches to you name it, all my colleagues in Amy and I worked very close together when she was at Coronado, and she was awesome. If you don't know her background and cheer and whatnot, she was awesome. And she was tough. Well, she still is, but oh my goodness, she was tough. Those cheer girls were like this. I mean, it happened, and it happened well, so she's a great role model for all of us. And I'm just tickled that she even thought to ask me to sit on this, but I do apologize for being late. But again, yes, relationships, and yes, egos. We do have to put our egos, because those of us women that have to work in leadership roles, we do have to have an ego. We do, but we also have to keep it in check and remember that it's not about us. It's about students. It's about coaches. It's about making women's athletics just as so much better. And I think we've made a lot of strides in that department.
Before I let Rebecca answer, I must tell all of the people who are listening and watching that in Texas, cheerleading is a sport. So yeah, just gotta throw that out there. It's not a sport in other states, but it is in Texas. So Rebecca, what are your ideas for the best practices for women?
Yeah, everybody really hit it on the head. I think my biggest point was going to be network and find those people that you can look to as mentors, male and female, like Brittany said. I know that when I was at UTEP and I was trying to struggle to figure out if I wanted to stay there or take that next step in my career, I reached out to somebody that one of my colleagues knew, and she's become one of my closest mentors. I call her up. We do check-ins all the time. You need it for your mentals. You need it for your getting through your day to day. So finding those people that'll be in your corner and advocate for you is huge, but also knowing that let your actions speak louder than your words. Go out there, put in the work, and make a name for yourself. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you're putting out the best work and being the best version of yourself, people are going to want you on their team.
Right. I think that several of you have mentioned the imposter syndrome, and perhaps even a better word for that would be confidence. You walk into the room with confidence. If you have the knowledge base and you were selected and you have the networking base, then you walk into any room with the confidence that you have studied, you are prepared, and you are ready. You know, any meeting can be taken, any sort of meeting that you're in or any sort of activity that you're doing has to be done with confidence in yourself and in your abilities. I think confidence is it's unparalleled. If you walk in and you're a wallflower, people aren't going to want you on their team. If you walk in and you are confident and you've done your job and you've done your studying and you've networked and you've done what you're supposed to do, that confidence is going to shine through, and you're going to be the one people turn to, I think, for advice, for mentoring, for information, and for panels like this. So I'm so blessed that all of you decided to join us today and share your expertise in your area. Anthony, do we have some questions from the gallery?
We do. First question, any other folks have questions? Oh, actually, we have one in CE. What is the biggest misconceptions about your positions?
We'll start with you, Taylor. What is the biggest misconception about your position as a director of compliance?
I was gonna say I can go first too. The biggest misconception, and the rest of us on here that work in college athletics would probably agree with me, is that compliance, they're like the police, they always say no. It's no, 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 you can't do this, you can't do that. So I mean, I really strive every day to have further conversations with, especially my coaches most of the time. What are their goals and where do they want to go? And how can we do that within the parameters of the NCAA rules?
Okay. Brittany, what's the biggest misconception about your position?
This might be more about college athletics, but I'm going to say that everyone has summers off, and that is definitely not true in college athletics, not even close. I guess it goes to my working hard, and that, you know, everyone sees from the fan perspective, and Megan has talked about that, right? But that it's fun and games, but there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of hard business decisions to make. There's a lot that goes into it. And you definitely do not have summers off, at least at the Division I college athletics level.
Baseball's still happening into the summer months. Track is still happening in the summer months, and we're gearing up for football in the summer months. There's no summers off for collegiate athletics. Rebecca?
I would say the biggest misconception is that marketing just rolls the t-shirts and puts up the fan cams. There's a lot more that goes into marketing in college athletics. You've got your game day piece and you got your traditional marketing piece. So I am known as the t-shirt tosser, is ultimately what we are.
Which is not the case at all.
Not the case at all. We do a lot more than just roll shirts.
Yes. Megan, what about you? What is the biggest misconception?
I think the biggest misconception that I guess will get a lot when I talk about my job is, oh, cool, so you just get to like hang out and like get paid to watch every game. And it's like,
Oh, yeah.
no, I was like, if anything, I don't watch the games till I get home and watch them like when we record it, because during the game, I'm running back and forth. Oh, someone lost their tickets. I need to text tickets. So-and-so's first game, I forgot to get him a pin. I never realized how big the arena is until I have to walk across it. And so I think that's like the biggest thing is I'm like, I didn't catch any of the game. I think it went well. I was like, at the end we won. I heard some cheering, but I could not tell you which plays happened, which player's doing well, because I'm walking past, the VOMs. I sometimes will peek in to see, who's winning, just to see what's going on. But I think that's the biggest one is I'm like, no, I'm really not just sitting watching the game. I'm running around putting out fires and everything.
Right. Maria is AD of a high school, of a school. What is the biggest misconception with your position?
Same thing. People think that it's just all just fun and games, that you just the games just magically appear and the officials magically appear. When I was the AD for El Paso ISD, we had 11 high schools and 17 middle schools, and I oversaw all of them, from the scheduling to the officials and just all the different things. I know when we've hired new people in our office and they really don't understand the magnitude of what it takes to actually run a huge district, that can be a little overwhelming. But I mean, people just don't realize that somebody has to make sure the officials show up. Somebody has to make sure that the buses get to pick up the kids. Somebody has to make sure that the officials are paid at some point, that everything that goes into an actual event, somebody has to take care of. And all of you do that in some form or fashion. But at the high school level, and even with the school that I'm at right now, it is a private girls' school. And so I'm at the mercy of all the other ADs in the area for games, because we're so isolated. We don't have a district that we actually get to play in without having to travel 4, 5, 6 hours for a game. So again, we're an independent, so we rely on all of the other school districts in our area. And fortunately, over the years, while I was a public school AD, we worked very closely with this school, and the counterpart is the boys' school, Cathedral. So we do a lot of things together, and we host a lot of events, we host a lot of tournaments, just so we can get games. And they can rely on these two, especially these two private schools that do a whole lot to enhance the athletics here in El Paso.
Okay, thank you. Anthony, we have another question.
Yep, Carly Big asked, how do you stay on task being an athletic director while wearing many hats?
Brittany?
Good question. I mean, everyone has different organizational styles, and I would say that, you know, there is no day that is the same. So it is, you know, staying on task is not easy. That is the truth. But I would say that, you know, learning how to prioritize what's coming across your desk, like all of a sudden, a student athlete issue might come up and you have to drop everything. And so really managing your time well. I think it goes back to, you know, what I said earlier. Sometimes you don't catch up on your email until you're at home after a game at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night, and that's when you can get some of your work done. So, you know, and everyone has a different style and different ways they, you know, do their to-do list, make notes, all those types of things. But I would say, you know, you have to learn how to prioritize what is important that day, and you can't get too overwhelmed by everything else that's going on. You have, you know, 10 other long-term projects. You just have to focus on kind of that moment and making sure, you know, especially if you're dealing with a student athlete, that you're putting on your best face, even though you might be stressed with some other things that are going on. You know, trying to manage all that. It's not easy, but you get used to it too as you do it more.
Yeah, as the AD of an independent school district, Maria, how did you stay on task wearing all those hats?
I carried my phone everywhere. I mean, it's true. Just like Brittany said, you know, you're in the middle of a big project and all of a sudden there's an emergency. Just imagine during COVID for high school athletics. First of all, I think probably and I don't want to say the worst, but yeah, the worst time was basketball season, because I can guarantee you that on any given day, we might cancel or change a basketball schedule 2 to 3 times in one day, just because so-and-so. And if you knew anything about how how El Paso was during COVID, we were probably one of the strictest, if not the strictest in the state. And we had very strict protocols that we had to follow. So if any one kid was infected, we were done. There was no wiggle room, no testing, no nothing. And so really for us, you just kind of go with the flow. There's really no other way to put it. If something comes up, you put aside what you're doing, you go take care of that, you come back and you meet your deadline. Whether it's, like you said, reading your emails at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. That's just what you do when you're an athletic director.
So I have a question for you. How many of you thought that once you finish with your master's degree or your JD, and I think Taylor's touched on this before, that you were going to come right out of school and be an athletic director? Did any of you think that?
Well, I can't say that I thought I was going to be an AD, but when I was finishing my master's program as a graduate assistant, I was in a situation where we didn't have a director. So it was marketing graduate assistants were running the department for an entire year. And I was fully set on, I'm going to come out of this position. I'm going to get an assistant director role. I'm going to go right into a director role. And it's going back to those conversations of having to like humble yourself. And I had to go into that coordinator role for a year as a full-time paid intern. And I had the mindset of, no, I'm definitely totally qualified for this. I'm going to do it. And just taking that step back, looking back now, if I would not have had the coordinator position, I would by no means be in the role that I'm in today. So, definitely didn't think I was gonna be an AD, but I definitely thought I was gonna be in a different spot coming out of undergrad.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I didn't think I was gonna, jump straight to the top either, but I definitely thought I would have an easier time just finding an entry level position. So compliance is so niche, to begin with, and not to say that anybody else's areas are not, but that's just what I do every day. And I had only been an intern while I was in law school for 2 semesters. So even though I had a full academic year's worth of experience in compliance, people who are hiring for full time, and it's what I would look for now if I had an open position, is more than that. And so that's why I had to swallow my ego. And the position I had at Villanova was actually a postgraduate internship type of position. And so I went and did that for a year, and then it was a 180 flip by the next springtime when I was applying for jobs again.
Excellent. Brittany, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I don't know that I thought I'd be an AD that, right out of, whether undergrad or finishing a master's, but I know that, you get emails all the time with people wanting to network and that are in their master's program saying, I want to be an athletic director, and which is obviously a great goal, but I would also say that there's a lot of other great roles in an athletic department that isn't always the AD, and sometimes being that front person is not for everyone. And there's a lot of, I look at my current role right now and, get to serve as kind of the chief of staff and be involved in a lot of what happens behind the scenes, but also get to see what happens behind the scenes. And sometimes you say, do I really want to do that? Right. And so there are a lot of other great roles in an athletic department than just being that athletic director that are really meaningful at a lot of different levels and a lot of different places.
And you're shaking your head, yes.
No, I just like what all them said. I mean, they, like athletic director, me, I started off right out of college at the Thunder, but I did inside sales, which is entry level. I was cold calling 60 to 70 leads a day. I did not like talking on the phone, but that's what I had to do. And everyone who I spoke to there at the Thunder all had done that or had done it at other places. And it was like, okay, so maybe like this isn't just a complete, waste of my time. And then it was from there that I got this position, more in the customer service role. And I've been like telling people, I'm like, I know you don't want to sit and make all those calls, but it's worth it. And almost every person that I've talked to in the sports industry can trace it back to some sort of entry level job that didn't look appealing. And me, I was coming from Texas. I had never been to Oklahoma, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it now. I'm going to get my foot in the door and then get back to Texas as soon as I could. And before I knew it, I fell in love with the organization, the city. I was working at basketball, which anyone who knew me knew I was a baseball fan, but it was just taking that risk and swallowing, my pride and my ego of, okay, no, I'm too good for this. It was, no, maybe you do need this step to get you where you need to be. Because I would have never thought I'd be working, in Oklahoma basketball when I was a junior in high school.
Right. Maria?
No, I don't think in my, in growing up, to do the things that I have done, was probably my wildest dreams. I don't know that I did my bachelor's, my master's came out, started in middle school athletics, and just kind of worked my way up, got married, went to El Paso, and really just kind of became friends with Rick Hernandez, Rick, and Ken Owen, who was my boss. And actually the plan was for Rick to become the athletic director and I would become his assistant. Well, as you know, that didn't happen. And again, you just go back to relationships. It just, and I live by some very simple words that God has a plan. And I really do believe that it's kind of worked out the way it was supposed to. I've done some really amazing things. I've met some amazing people. I think my role right now at Loretto is, to me, a testament of what that plan is. The young man that's my assistant, I feel like he's just like a sponge. He's just taking everything in. And I won't be there much longer because I've already accepted another position somewhere else. And so I feel like I was meant to be there for him. Because he is really energetic and he's enthused. He loves Loretto. He loves the girls. He's the soccer coach. And so I just feel like I've played a role in just throughout my life.
Success. Yeah.
And I hope that he has learned something, and I hope that he will continue to reach out, and I can keep mentoring him to, and I know he'll do a great job there if he gets to be the AD.
So we've talked several times now, and many of you have mentioned networking. And so for those people listening, this is how this works. I taught Megan. I worked with Rebecca. I worked for Maria, and Anthony and I worked together. I got to Brittany because of Anthony, and I got to Taylor because I used to work at UTEP. And so that's where that networking comes in. That's where the tentacles happen. I got to Taylor because of the person that I worked with at UTEP, and she knew this and that, and Rebecca because she was at UTEP. And so that's where those relationships come in. That's the importance of networking, because I would have never gotten to Brittany had I not known Anthony. And I would have never gotten to Taylor had I not known Julie Levesque at UTEP, who she now works with. And so, the relationships that have spanned this screen, the relationship spans 30 years with Maria. So it's a long time that you hold those people close to your heart. You hold them in your phone. You hold them in your Rolodex, wherever you hold them. You know that eventually the people that you meet will somehow play a role in your future. And that, for me, that's what's happened. So,
Dr. Stella,
Anthony.
if I could piggyback off of that as well.
Sure.
Another question here. Again, the other thing I tell my students all the time, and you guys as mentors too, give them that gentle nudge of when you're at an event, get in there and start, talking to folks. Dr. Stella and I met at the United States Sports Academy, an event down there, and the whole panel, I networked with everyone, and then this is how we built the partnership here. So again, you got to, especially in the sports industry, you always say it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So it's important to be proactive and get out there. We have a question here too. Do you have or see characteristics that observe with your best leaders? Are they universal?
Oh, are the best characteristics that you've seen in leaders universal between men and women? Is what they're asking.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody want to take that question?
Yeah, I can go first. We were actually just talking about this at work. We were kind of going through like what we like in a leader, and I was reading this one book that really stood out to me, and it kind of reminded me of one of my bosses that I have now. Is good leaders, are willing to delegate, and I think a lot of time we see leaders as, oh, they're so busy because they have all this to do, and they are so scared to delegate it out or to give it to people because they'll become portrayed as replaceable. Whereas it said good leaders trust in their employees and will delegate because they are trying to make that employee good enough to take the role, not that they're going to replace them. And so I thought that was really cool. And I was like, I've been with leaders who sit and are like, I'm so busy. And I'm like, hey, I can help out. And they're like, no. And then there's some that are like, you know what, I trust in your skills, that I can trust you with this role. And it makes me feel so good about myself. And I think that's one thing I've started paying attention with bosses and around the Thunder is just how cool, some of these subordinates have been able to take on roles or tasks because their boss trusts them and doesn't have this pride of, no, I'm the boss, I need all of the jobs. It was, no, I trust my employees because I trained them well enough. And I think that's one big thing that I'm really striving to do as, I grow as a leader, is just, kind of the whole back to swallowing your ego of, I know I'm a perfectionist, I have my roles, but if I'm a good enough leader, then the people who I oversee should be able to, do exactly what I'm doing. So that means that I trained them successfully.
Rebecca, you're shaking your head yes over there.
100% agree. She nailed it. I would
Awesome.
not agree more.
Anybody else have anything to add there? No? Okay, Anthony, another question?
Yes. So again, another thing we work with our students on is resumes and cover letters. What do you folks, what can our students do, or just students in general, undergraduate, graduate, do to stand out when applying for jobs in terms of impact value? And what are you guys looking for on cover letter and again as well, resumes?
Okay. Anybody want to take that? Brittany, you look pensive over there.
Well, I'm going back to the network piece as we asked that question. I think we all get hundreds of resumes or cover letters sometimes when you have an open job. And obviously, having experience, even if it's just an internship, I always tell people, even if you have to volunteer for a month at, something in the sport industry to put on your resume, is a good thing, because that will pop off the page when you see a resume like that. But I always say that, network now, like even if you're not applying for a job, send an email. I get emails all the time of, hey, can I just connect for 30 minutes and hear about your career path and what you've done? And, you may apply to a job, at BU 2 years later, and we've made a connection. So I would say, it's not necessarily a resume or cover letter, recommendation or hint. It's more continue to try to make connections now before you're applying to jobs, because it will pay off. And sometimes you won't get responses when you send emails to people, but I would say keep trying. There's definitely ways to continue to network to make sure your resume gets seen when it is in a pile.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, kind of this one is entirely to stand out, but it's kind of something, I think it's important, and you're probably going to laugh at this, but your social media, I definitely think kind of being on this side is something that I've really learned, can make or break a candidate. So, you want to make sure, just since today everything's on the internet, I can tell you when we get candidates, we immediately look them up, and we've come across things and we go to our boss and we're like, we don't want this person like a part of our organization, or they put things on there. And I think that's one thing a lot of people don't think about, but us, we look, we want to make sure. And so even though that's not a way to stand out, it's just the simplest thing to make sure that you're not automatically, taken off of any list. And because I think it just goes under the radar that people don't realize that nowadays everything, is on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Agree, 100%. Rebecca, do you or Taylor, do you either one of you receive resumes?
So I do. We actually just went through hiring. I just did my first hire here at Penn State. So super exciting process to go through. But I might be the one person, I go right to somebody's resume and I want to see the experiences and I want to see the places you've worked, so that, like Brittany alluded to, I will reach out to somebody based on if they're a reference or not. I want to know the ins and out of why you're applying. I want to know your background. And it just goes back to, you want to make that impression no matter where you're at, whether it was a good or a bad experience, so that if somebody reaches out to somebody that's not on your reference list, they're still going to give you a glowing review. I also am not a huge fan of cover letters. I don't know if it's because I personally hate writing cover letters, but I will jump right to somebody's resume. And if their resume sticks out to me, then I'll go back and read their cover letter. So I put all of my
Because
eggs
the
in my
cover letter
resume.
says, I want a job.
Pretty
The
much.
cover
And
letter
I'm just
says-
like, I know how painful it is for me to write a cover letter. I know how painful it is for somebody applying for the job to write a cover letter. So I look at the resume and then I go to your cover letter.
Okay. Taylor?
I just want to highlight the networking piece again. I will oftentimes try to look people up on LinkedIn a lot. And just going back to how small of a world it is, seeing if we have mutual connections or where they've been, because odds are that if I don't know somebody who they're connected with, I probably know somebody who knows somebody. Like, it's probably just one additional degree of separation. So I just think the networking is so important. And then also, just to give advice for a resume and cover letter, please proofread, double check, all of that. I have had so many resumes and cover letters that have typos, or that they, and I've been guilty of it as well. You write one cover letter, you apply to multiple jobs. You have to change, the institution where you're applying to. So I've received cover letters that were intended or originally written for other schools. And that doesn't make me want to take that candidate seriously, because they didn't take the time, or it appears that they didn't take the time to proofread that.
Especially in a detail-oriented, compliance. If they're not detail-oriented to where they don't pick up their own mistakes or their typos, they didn't use spell check, for goodness sake, then you don't need them working in the rule-driven compliance area or anywhere,
Exactly.
right? I think another thing would be is to, if you're applying someplace, make sure you know the history. Make sure you know where you're applying and why. If you're applying to, say, a Christian university, make sure your morals and values align with the mission of that university that you're applying to. If you're not applying to that kind of place, and please make sure wherever you are applying, the mission statement that they have, whether it's professional, collegiate, or high school sports, or make sure that your mission and your life aligns with the mission statement that they're trying to put forth. Maria, are you just you have a
Well,
comment there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference in public schools in Texas when you're hiring, first and foremost, you have to be a certified Texas teacher. We cannot hire coaches unless they're teaching in this respective district. So of course that really creates some disadvantages, because you may have the most qualified coach that you want to hire, and they're a PE teacher. Well, if you know anything about physical education, unfortunately, those numbers and that market is saturated. So you always what I always try to tell young coaches is make yourself as marketable as possible. Get certifications in other fields. If you're going to stay in Texas, you're going to have to teach in public school. I mean, that's a given. So I really just tell the kids. My grandson, who's 22 and he's trying to finish up, says he wants to be a teacher and a coach. Imagine that. I told him, just don't do physical education. Whatever you do, don't go to PE. I know it's fun and whatever, but you're going to be hard pressed to get a job. So that's really my advice when young people coming out of college, especially in Texas, is that you make yourself as marketable as possible, and get a teaching degree in something other than just physical education. English, math, science, special ed, all of those are needed very much so. So that would be my advice for applications especially in Texas.
Okay, thank you. Anthony, anything else you have?
No, we get about 2 minutes left, but I have one that kind of, I guess, delves a little bit deeper, because one of the students asked, that question there. They want to know too, well, two things: transferable skills, and also quantifying. Putting down, if I volunteered at a golf tournament, we had to raise, $15,000. How important is that to you folks, in seeing that quantifying and transferring skills that maybe they didn't work in the sports industry?
I'll take this one first. Transferable skills. They need to highlight those transferable skills. So when they say they worked on a golf tournament, what precisely did they do? Did they do all of the sizing for the t-shirts? Did they work with the concessionaire? Did they work on the contract? Did they meet with the people at the golf course? Did they do the scramble? What were the jobs that they held? And they need to really think about what it is that they did doing those things. And then those are the things that they highlight and talk about: transferable and relatable skills. Because you can transfer into any industry as long as you've highlighted what it is you're doing, at least from my perspective. You want to talk about that, Brittany? Do you have something you want to add?
No, I think that's true. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the things we all do are similar. Oftentimes people, especially in college athletics, if I leave Division I and I go to the Division III level, what does that look like? And oftentimes I just say the comma's sometimes in a different spot from a financial perspective. But Amy, you said it well. Like, you gotta don't think about the task. Think about what are the skills you're using while you're doing that task that make it transferable. And how you, for me, a lot of it's how you work with people. Are you a team player? Whatever, from a relationship standpoint, how do you either talk to people? How do you manage people? How do you lead people? You may not do that in an entry level role, but there's things you do on a daily basis that maybe make you a leader in that entry level role. So try to find those pieces that you can definitely highlight.
Rebecca, you're shaking your head, yes.
Yeah, I absolutely echo what Brittany just said. I mean, for us on a marketing side, we do understand that a lot of our roles that we post are entry level and you're not going to have the most experience, but it's being able to cater and figure out those roles that you have been in, whether it's internship, paid, unpaid, whatever it may be, and how that pertains to the job you're applying for. Biggest thing that one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten is actually pulling up that job posting as you're filling out your resume. How can you take some of those keywords from the job listing and put that into your resume or into your cover letter, so that there is the correlation between the two? And then for us, we look for how have you raised the attendance numbers, how those quantifiable things. The farther you get into roles within athletics, the more important those become. I know that's something that I'm always looking to kind of update my resume to how can I get more of those quantifiable things on my resume, going from the basic, what it was when I was applying to entry level positions, to making my resume stand out compared to others that are applying.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in on that? No? Brittany did mention something about I think D1, D2, D3, and the comma, with the financials. Some students think that D1 is the only way to go. They think, oh, they have to work for a D1 institution. And I like to point out that there's NAIA, there's D1, there's D2, there's D3, there's the NCCAA. There are options for people who want to work in collegiate athletics, and it doesn't just have to be D1. Rebecca, you've worked for other schools, right, that are not D1, and you were an athlete at a D2.
Yep, I started at the D2 level, and I think it gave me a different appreciation for things. I've worked at 3 mid majors, and now I'm back into a Power 5 conference. So they all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses. It's not all like rainbows and butterflies at the Division I Power 5 level. We have our hiccups as well. We have our roadblocks and challenges that we have to get through, just like any other level of a school would be at.
Okay. And Taylor, you've worked for other schools as well that are not all D1, correct?
I've only worked at D1 schools.
Oh, D1. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I
Brittany,
guess I'll add, I do have a colleague that I'm very close with, and she's a bit of a mentor to me, and she came up through the Division III level, and she talked about how much it taught her. So I actually worked with her when I was at Villanova, and when I was looking to leave there for my next position, she actually, it was like her little voice in the back of my head was to take the position at Creighton, which is a mid-major school and a much smaller athletic department. And Dr. Stell, I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Me taking the position at Creighton is the reason that I am in this role at UTEP now, because going to a smaller department, I had my hands in so many more things. And had I gone to a larger school, particularly in the Power 5 conference, I would have only gotten experience doing working with these couple teams or this one section of the rules, but at Creighton, I got to do all of it. And so that's what prepared me for the role I'm in now.
Mm-hmm. Brittany, you're shaking your head, yes.
Yeah, I was a D3 student athlete, so I've seen it at that level, and obviously been at the Division I level for a while, but there's, even different tiers within Division I. So I think people often think a lot about, Penn State, right? And what that looks like from a college athletics perspective, or the Power 4 or 5, whatever we'd like to call it right now. And, even there's obviously a lot of things happening within the NCAA right now, and especially at the Division I level. And there's a lot of separation even there. And so you got to find more the right fit and what is important, what do you value, because every department and every university has different things. So it's important to kind of figure out what's important to you, and then what school fits. And sometimes that doesn't happen in your entry level first job. It takes some time to find that, but you have to evaluate what's important and what you want to be a part of.
Okay. Anybody else? No. Anthony, do you have anything else?
No, that's it. Just wanted to say thank you to the panel and Dr. Stella as well. Would you guys folks mind if any students that couldn't come on here, if they had any questions, if they could reach out and send you an email as well?
Yep.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks again. And I appreciate taking the time tonight. And thanks, Dr. Stella, for all you do.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.